During the introduction section, we focused on the mind, how we think about and perceive our work. Today, we're going to go with our gut instinct, our intuition, even common sense if you will. This time, I'm going to ask you not to overthink things as we talk about what's normal. This one will be straightforward. As is our usual fare, we're taking a quick minute to recap what we've gone over before. We've developed a baseline, a foundation for understanding equity. We've covered 7 different principles and concepts on the subject. We'll keep these previous lessons in mind as they will help us with our lessons moving forward. For now, we're taking a shift and looking at where things currently stand with our work, our current practices, what we're doing well, and on the flip side, where we need to step it up some more. As we discuss the idea of normal, I want to assure all of us that it's not a trick question. If you've already thought ahead and are saying, well, isn't what's normal and not subjective? Yes, it is very subjective. What's normal to one person is different, an outlier, a bit strange to someone else. And our subjective opinions matter, which is why we're going to focus on them right now. It's intuitive. It's what we feel deep down. It's natural to feel some things in our life are normal. Regardless of who we are, we will and do have an idea of what is a normal resident in our jurisdiction. So too with what is a normal community, whether we define normal by our state, in my case Colorado, or nationally or by some other measure. We also have an idea of what a normal career trajectory in our profession is, whether we think we fall under said normal career path or not. Our emphasis today is to think on what we consider normal as opposed to having our opinion of what's normal and not on autopilot. We want a clear idea of what our normal is. We seek to understand what is normal because it then leads us to what is not normal. It's simple math. If some things are normal, then logically other things are not. Some things will deviate, at least to some degree, from what we perceive as normal. Once more, this is natural. Just as we can think of what is normal, we can reflect on what deviates, whether we think that's good, bad, both, or neither. What's an example of a not normal resident? Community. Career trajectory. No right or wrong, only what our personal truth is right now. Remember our video, our page in the guidebook on categories? Which ones came to mind when figuring out what's normal and not? Which categories did you not consider? If we go back and look through them, what new revelations on what we see as normal and not can we find? One concern with equity I want us to put to the side for now is the idea of bad intent. I ask it because we're not there yet. There are other things we can go over first before tackling this concern. Yes, there is still a lot of bigotry, and it causes a lot of harm day by day, year by year, generation by generation. Bad intent can also be hard to prove. We many times aren't able to definitively prove some acted with malice. People don't necessarily write their motives in a journal or record it for others to listen to. This and there are other sources of discrimination that aren't necessarily rooted in bad intentions. Other causes include, but aren't limited to, a lack of awareness, taking actions and just not knowing the consequences of them, implicit biases, those unintentional feelings that fly under the radar even to ourselves. There's the common but misguided idea of color blindness, to just not see color, when in practice it downplays and denies the real disparities that already exist in the normal day status quo of our work. For some, it's just easier to accept the norm as good enough, or the best that there can be, not wanting to poke the hornet's nest, even if that's what we need to do in order to be more equitable. And finally, as local government professionals, we often inherit policies, practices, ordinances, and more that did start with bad intent when they were written, and now we're just following the rules. We often think of people unserved because they are directly targeted. Consider what happens, though, when they're invisible, when we don't see, think about, or consider them at all when figuring out how best to serve the community as a whole. Once more, bad intent is very real, and we have to expand our thoughts on what causes disparities on top of that. We have to accept that we can cause harm simply by serving only those who fall under what our perception of normal is, by forgetting about those who fall outside of it. What do we do? What can be done? First, just be aware of it. Accept what we see as normal and what we don't feel is normal. This can be a difficult first step when considering the current state, and it is a necessary one. From this base awareness, we can take some extra time to consider others in the work we do. A day, an hour, a minute, even a few moments if that is what we can spare to move beyond normal considerations and take other demographics, other situations, other ideas into account. We have to take control over our gut feelings. Just like choosing what we eat in a meal, we also choose what we expose ourselves to. We choose what places we go to. We choose what seems more normal and natural over time. What is not normal for us today can become more normal if we put in the time and effort. For the town of Erie, they have a good example of equity work related to our ideas of normal. They were, as of 2022, starting a comprehensive educational series for their staff. Their first topic was housing, showing information on why trends with housing are the way they are through statistics, histories, leading to what is the status quo today. In this way, they've made what is normal, in this case in housing, understood in more concrete ways. They provided numbers, context, stories that keep the norm at the forefront of our minds and not taken for granted. Thank you, Erie. For the optional exercise, it's taking this concept one step further. Now that we're thinking about what is normal to us and not, where does it come from? What has shaped our definition of normal, whether in our individual work, our department, our community? As I said at the start of this video, don't overthink this one too much. What experiences, what news sources, what leaders influence us? If we really want to take this the extra mile, we start to get into culture. Whatever sources we may have thought of in the optional exercise can be lumped into the greater idea of culture. We start learning about what cultures we belong to, whether that culture is based nationally, regionally, by social class, by faith, by our heritage, and of course by the work we do. I want to emphasize when it comes to wrapping our heads around the normal, we consider our culture before learning about the cultures of others. We look to see what we have in common with and what we do not with our respective demographics, background, and profession. Up next, we continue reviewing the current state with objectiveness.